Hello, and welcome back to the very much long-awaited third episode of the Gilmore The Merrier. It has been 3 months since I last recorded. Deepest apologies. There really isn't that much of an explanation. I just kind of got busy. But I'm back now, and that's what's important. So, episode 3, Gilmore Girls Season 1. A title I very much relate to. Kill Me Now. I feel like this is when the show gets into its normalcy, because season 1 episode 1, I've expressed this, maybe my least favorite episode. Still love it, but it's maybe my least favorite episode. Season 2, definitely one of my all-time favorites. Season 3, episode 3, average, and we're good with that. It's amazing. I love every episode, but it gets into a normalcy. It's less introductory than the first 2 episodes. So we start at Friday night dinner at the Gilmore's house. Richard says, "This is a great." I don't know if they're having four de gras or whatever the Gilmores eat, but Richard's like, "Oh, this is great," and then Emily's like, "Oh yeah, Heidi makes great whatever this is," and then Laura. I'm really dialoguing this too much, but Lorelai's basically like, "That's not the name of the cook I heard last time," and then she's like, "Oh no, I fired her." And then she lists off 5 maids that she's had in a month, which is wild. 5 maids in a month, that's you're laying one off every 4 days. That's actually not what it's like. I don't know how math works. It's like you're laying one off every week. And then she's like, "But we got this new cook, and her name is Mira." They leave it at that, but then the cook comes out, and Lorelai's, "Oh, thank you, Mira." And then she's like, "My name is Sarah." So Emily couldn't even remember the name of the maid that she had right now. Crazy. Offensive. Prison. And then they start talking about Lorelai the First, aka Richard's mother, aka Lorelai's grandmother, aka Trix, which is what Richard calls her. I don't know if that's actually mentioned in this episode that he calls her Trix, but she's known in later episodes as Trix. That's the thing. Whenever they're speaking about her in this episode, it's she was this, she was blank, she was an equestrian, a patron of the arts, she was known for her masquerade balls. But she's not dead. We meet Trix in later episodes. I think in season 3 we meet Trix. No, in season 2 we meet Trix for the first time. Yeah, but Emily immediately shows discomfort at the bringing up of Trix, which is a really subtle drop here, because her and Trix have a very similar relationship to what she has with Lorelai, to as how Emily looks down on Lorelai is how Trix looks down on Emily, which, I mean, I guess it's bad for Emily, but the thing is also, Emily is her daughter-in-law. They're not actually related. I'm not saying she should treat her awfully, but it's less bad than treating your own daughter like that, which is horrid, wretched. I'm realizing more and more that maybe I don't love Emily Gilmore as much as I thought I did. She's great, but I kind of hate her. Okay. Anyways, they're going through their dinner, and then Emily yells into the kitchen, "Oh, Mira, can you bring this?" And then Lorelai's like, "Sure, and why don't you bring Sarah with you?" Which, great. Love Lorelai for that. Slade. Okay. Then it does a weird thing where usually there's a scene, and then there's the intro, and then they go to a different scene. But they just cut it off here. They go through the intro, and then they come back to Friday night dinner. Weird. So then, when they're coming back, they talk about Lorelai's running this wedding at an inn. Well, at not an inn, at her inn. And then she was gonna like continue on with that conversation, but then Emily immediately like jumps in with what about you, Rory? Which like Lorelai obviously kind of objects to, but Emily kind of brushes her off. But like, there's nothing I hate worse than when people ask you like, "How are you doing?" or like, "What are you doing?" and then don't actually listen to you tell them how or what you're doing. Like, you asked the question. This is on you. Okay. So then Rory has to pick a sport for Chilton, a team sport, which I get it's a private school, and private schools have weird requirements, but requiring all of your students to do a team sport is kind of awful. If I was at any point in my high school career required to do a team sport, I would riot. I've done team sports. Not for me. And I like the fact that I have the option to say that's not for me. Forcing kids to do sports. Kind of crazy. I mean, I get it when they're like 6 or 5 and you're like, oh, Timmy, you're going to soccer practice. They don't know what they want. They need their horizons broadened at that age. But when a kid's like 16, you should be forcing them to do any activities. Except for like school, obviously. But like, you shouldn't be forcing your kids to have hobbies at that age. If they don't have hobbies, then they're just weird. Accept it. Anyways, rant aside. So then Emily's like, oh, Chilton has a golf team. Richard knows how to golf because of course he does. He's just a finance bro. Richard is a finance bro. But then Richard, despicably, doesn't want to teach Rory how to play golf. He doesn't want to take the one day out of his busy life schedule to help his granddaughter learn how to play golf. Rude. It's just weird because I feel like the build up to Richard being really close with Rory is in this episode alone. And then instantly in every other episode they're best friends. But in the beginning of this episode he despises her. Which, I mean, at least wait until season 4 to despise Rory like the rest of us. Okay. Then Emily is talking to Rory about it, and she's like, oh yeah, you can use your mother's golf clubs. They're up in the attic with the rest of your mother's potential. Crazy. Again, terrible thing to say to your daughter, but it ate. It ate. Decimated. Roasted. Destroyed. Lorelai would never recover. Okay. Then, Lorelai, she doesn't think that Rory would enjoy going to the club with Richard, which is valid. Most kids wouldn't enjoy going to the club with their grandfather. Golf club. Golf club. I need to make it clear. It is a golf club. But then, and she also knows that Richard doesn't want to. And she's telling Emily that. And she's like, oh, your father doesn't know what he wants, which, toxic marriage. That's what we call a toxic marriage, when she believes that she knows what he wants more than he knows what he wants. Not saying that Richard and Emily are toxic. I think they are genuinely a good pair for each other. They're not good people. They're not good people in general. But together, they work. But that statement, toxicity. Emily says that she thinks that the reason Lorelai doesn't want this is because she's scared that Rory is gonna like have a relationship with the grandparents, and that's gonna take away from her relationship with Lorelai, which is not true in any capacity. They clearly don't know Rory well enough to know that nothing is gonna subtract from her and Lorelai. They're the Gilmore Girls, super secret clubhouse. There's no one as close to either of them as them. Which is part of the reason I think later. This is off track, but I'm gonna go off track. That's what I do here. You all know it. Part of the reason that their later relationships with people work is because they know that fundamentally Rory and Lorelai are the most important people in each other's lives. That's how Lorelai and Luke works. That's how they work because they know Luke knows that he is always going to be second place in Lorelai's life to Rory. I think that's part of how Logan works. Is he knows that he is second place to Lorelai. I'm not saying that Logan works. I'm Team Jess all the way here. But I think it's important to acknowledge at least that little point in Logan's favor. We got seasons upon seasons before we get to Logan, so let's get back on track. Um, so Rory, they're going out, they're leaving, and Rory's optimistic about the club. She thinks she's not gonna hate it, but she wants Laura to come with her. And then Lorelai goes on this bit that I love. It's I'd rather jump in a vat of razor blades than a jump in a vat of alcohol. I'd rather use my own head as a punch bowl. She'd go on and on about things she'd rather do than go to the golf club with her father. Valid. I kind of hate golf. That's a whole separate rant, but I don't know. It just feels like a. It just feels annoying. It's a weird sport. I don't even know if it can qualify as a sport. I don't know. I never get the appeal of golf. Okay. Then, scene 3, we go to the inn. The wedding that they're having at the inn is actually a twin wedding. So it's these two twin girls who are getting married at the same time. And then they're arguing about the flowers, with Lorelai saying that one of them wanted blue flowers, one of them wanted pink flowers. The mother steps in, very annoyed, and she tells her daughters to quote unquote go away. My Advil is wearing off. Mother activities. Slade. I no further explanation. The mother is talking to Lorelai about parenting, and she said that she's sad that they won't move away. It's great. And then also, there's just like the mother is coming to Lorelai with all of her potential concerns of the wedding, and Lorelai has an answer for every one of those things. And I think how good Lorelai is at her job is underappreciated in this fandom. She is a great manager of the inn. I think, like genuinely, she is top of her field. Even in later seasons, when she gets her own inn, companies want to hire her on as a consultant for other inns because they see how good she is, how what she does. Of course, she doesn't take it because um, the dragonfly has always been their dream. But it's important to know that they offered. Okay, and then also they're talking about Jordan almonds and how there's like they need to get a shipment of like 100,000 Jordan almonds or like 100 Jordan almonds. What are Jordan almonds? Are they just like a different kind of almond? Are they like almonds in something or something? I'm gonna look it up, chat. Let's see what Jordan almonds actually are. Oh, they're like, I guess, chocolate covered? I don't think it's chocolate. Okay. We're going down this research rabbit hole on what Jordan almonds are. Jordan almonds, also known as sugared almonds, draggeries or confetti, I would never call them confetti, are sugar-coated almond candies. That was honestly less eventful. I thought it was going to be something slightly cooler than that. They should also only be given in odd, single-digit numbers. A lot of, like, wedding things I understand, wedding traditions. But the Jordan almond thing, I don't know, kind of weird. Anyways, I make getting off track a sport. I'm an Olympic getting off track, or I am the Superman of getting off track. I am the I am the Steven Nordakowski of the Olympic getting off track team. Okay. So then, like, they're setting up stuff for the wedding. Michelle, visibly annoyed, because that's what Michelle does. He has a niche, and he sticks to it. And then the grooms walk in, and they realize it is a double twin wedding. To explain that further, the two brides are twin sisters. The two grooms are twin brothers. So it's a twin and a twin marrying a different twin and a twin. Which is weird. Like, I need to know how they met. I need a spin-off show about the twin wedding. How did these people meet? What possessed them to think about which couple started first, and what possessed the other one to think they should start dating? Also, Suki later brings up, like, what if they, like, accidentally, like, lose track of who's who and, like, switch up? And that needs to be a case study. That needs to be Harvard researched. Also, because, like, the parents are, like, genetically identical, or at least I think that's how twins work. Would there both of, and if they both couple had a kid, would they be siblings? Would they be cousins? The world may never know, and I don't think the world should ever know. I mean, I guess technically, like, neither of the couples are doing anything wrong, but it's still kind of weird. It's unusual. It's odd. Okay. So, then it's the next morning. We flash to the Gilmore's house, and Richard and Emily are getting Richard ready to go to the golf club. And then Richard makes this comment about how Rory wouldn't want to be there. Rory would rather go to the mall than go golfing with her grandfather, which I guess technically is a correct statement, but the way he phrases it really shows he doesn't know Rory at all at this point. Because that's not the first thing you're going to say about Rory if you know Rory. We are only 3 episodes in at this point, and again, slightly biased. I've watched this show like a dozen times through. But at this point of the series, you already know that that's not the first thing you think of when you think of Rory. She is not like the other girls, TM. She's just one of the boys. She's not. At least not yet. Season 4 comes around. But, like, yeah, she would rather, like, read a book or eat an obsessive amount of junk food. That's Rory. At least those are the things you think of before you think of going to the mall for Rory. But he doesn't know her like that because he never had a relationship with his granddaughter, which is partially on him, but also partially on Lorelai because she created that distance from them. Okay. So then Emily starts going off on Richard, saying that if he doesn't make this a good time for Rory, that she will, like, that it's going to reflect badly on their relationship, which, I don't agree with most of the things Emily Gilmore does. I cannot only like her because she has flair when she does it, and I respect that. But this was a rare Emily Gilmore W, defending her granddaughter like that. And then she ruins it all by getting her that hat. The hat. People who have watched Gilmore Girls before know about the hat. It appears in, I think, the first 2 seasons of intros, and it is horrid. It's disgusting. And I don't think it should have ever been made. I think fashion design died a little when that hat was designed. Anyways, so Richard and Rory are off. They're at the club. And they're actually bantering a little bit even before they're, like, getting to know each other about, like, how the club has more restrictions on it than the FBI. But I don't know. I think it's a very clear indication of how they go forward, but I also think it might not have been really a Richard and Rory banter. I think it might have been an Edward Herman and Alexis Bledel banter, At least that is the energy I got off of it. That's my actor's perspective on the whole thing. I think the actors had chemistry, but the characters didn't quite have the history and the storyline to back it up at this point in the episode yet. It kind of throws me off because this is supposed to be the point where they don't really know each other well. Then later in the episode, they get closer. Okay. They're talking about golf. Gross. We've been over this. Yeah. But Rory does make this statement that I'm pretty sure is a quote about golf being a good walk spoiled, which I think is exactly the perfect way to describe golf. A good walk spoiled. Yeah, it is a quote. But I don't. It's a quote from Mark Twain. I feel like this doesn't feel like a Mark Twain quote. Like, he wrote Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer. I feel like his golf opinions aren't really the thing that we should be recognizing him from. But what do I know? I don't play golf, and I don't read Huck Finn. I mean, I have. But I don't like it, I'm gonna be honest. Anyways. That's a big anyways. So they're golfing, I guess. Rory's not good at it because she's Rory Gilmore. She doesn't do the sports, which is a common theme between the Gilmore girls. Like, they talk about golf. They talk about the weird sport where you throw balls against the wall and hit them with your racket. And the Gilmore girls talk about their deep-seated hatred of sports. Football. They talk a lot about how they don't like football, especially in the episode when they go to the Yale and Harvard game. I think that's in season 4. They talk about how they don't like football, but they're only going because Richard and Emily want them to. Which is a common theme with them in sports. Now that I think about it, it's they don't like sports, but Richard and Emily are forcing them to do it, which is actually a common theme of pretty much everything in this entire show. Kind of half the conflict. Richard... there's so many Richard and Emily defenders on the internet and in the Gilmore Girls fandom, and I kind of get it. I mean, they have their good moments, but they're the main antagonists of the show. I mean, it doesn't really come off that way because it's not like they're super villains twirling their mustache, more ha 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 villains, but they do generate most of the conflict in the show. That's a whole rant. And then Richard goes on a whole rant about how the driver is the most powerful golf club in your tool, and it requires confidence and humility. And man, this is golf. You're teaching her how to golf. This is not War and Peace. I think he's going a little far there with the explanation. It's not like the end of the world. It's a golf game. Out of all sports that are influential, I would put golf at the bottom. I would put Olympic solo synchronized swimming slightly above golf in emotional importance. So now we're back at the inn, in the kitchen specifically, with, as I've said before, my favorite couple, Jackson and Suki. But they're not a couple at this point. That should be noted. So Suki was supposed to make a strawberry shortcake for the wedding, but then Jackson decided that his strawberry crop wasn't good enough, so he brings her blueberries. Because, I don't know, I'm conflicted on this. On one hand, it's very rude to just be like, I'm not going to give you the thing that you ordered from me as your produce man. On the other hand, I think it's cute that he knew her well enough to know that she wouldn't have liked the strawberry crop. I think if that's what you're taking away from that, that's great. But I don't know. I'm on either side of this. I can be pushed one way or the other. I don't really think this is like a groundbreaking conflict that we should be spending hours of our mental stability just breaking down. But it's noted. It's noted. Okay. But then Suki does something that is inarguably so me coded, which is cries about her food. Been there, done that, especially while baking. Okay. Then they're having another argument, the twins, and the mother, again, is that girl. She is her. The mother is Brat. The mother is Brat. She says that she wants to go away and never come back from her own kid's wedding, which I respect so much of. And then Suki, Lorelai, and Michelle, who are the most underappreciated trio of this entire show, besides maybe Rory, Jess, and Paris. But we only get one Rory, Jess, and Paris episode. We get so many scenes between Michelle, Lorelai, and Suki, and I think they're so underappreciated as a trio. They're all talking about the logistics of the twins, the twin wedding, and then they're talking about which one's which, to which Michelle had secretly put a post-it note on both of their backs with their names written on it. Which, ingenuity, ingenious, invention, innovation, engineering. I can't come up with any other words that make sense within this context. So we are moving on. They also state that it's against the laws of nature, which I think is exactly how I would describe the whole twin wedding thing. Against the laws of nature. Should not happen. The statistical probability. Okay, let's say theoretically there was someone for everyone. The statistical probability of your twins, other one being your husband's twin, highly unlikely. Should not happen. You can find someone else. Look longer. Also, the whole double wedding thing. I mean, I like double weddings in concept, but I think I personally am a little too selfish to have a double wedding because then that's like half of the attention goes to the other person getting married. And the wedding is supposed to be like your day, but it's also now going to be your day and someone else's day as a side of being your and your spouse's day and your and their spouse's day. Now it's four people having to divide all of the attention. Maybe I am just selfish. That is a possibility. So again, the mother, who, as I've stated, is Brat. I will die on that hill. She is Brat. She's a pink pony girl. She's a red wine supernova. Um, she was talking to Lorelai about raising the girls, and she said, "quote unquote," giving labor was the high point for me, which is why I'm scared to be a parent. Yeah, there's just a resounding fear, and I think everyone who's even considered having kids that they're just gonna be horrible people. You don't know before you're gonna have a kid if it's just gonna be what's the most horrible person you've ever met, and you just have to deal with that if you have kids. Okay, so we're back at the club with Richard and Rory. That sounds like a theme song. Back at the club with Richard and Rory. Because it rhymed, because they both have R's in their name. Well, technically, Rory doesn't, because her name is Lorelai. But technically, the R is still in her name. It just doesn't start her name. I'm rambling, but I'm rambling in rhythm, so it's okay. So they're talking about, the scenery and the club and how it's pretty and stuff, I guess. But then she asks him what he does for work, and he just says, it would bore you, all of my duties, to which she kind of just, you know, is upset by that because he's basically saying, I don't have the time or energy to explain what I do for my job to my granddaughter, which is very disrespectful. Richard is a very disrespectful person in this episode. But also, I think early parts of this episode are some of the worst we ever see Richard. Because Richard is usually portrayed as the good Gilmore, which I don't think he is. I think even he is partially responsible for most of the horrible things that Emily does because he enables her. You can't, when they were in the capacity in which they were married, you can't separate all of the horrible and evil things that Emily does from Richard. They are inherently linked because Richard is enabling all of that behavior. So with the things that Emily does to Rory or Lorelai or Luke in later episodes, yes, Emily carries the brunt of that blame, but Richard is her husband and her enabler, so he also carries just a little bit of that weight. That should be noted. So we're back in the Gulf, and they're talking about how she wants to go to Fez, how she has a yen for travel, which is a fun phrase that I think we should use more often. I have a yen for travel. It's just fun to say. That's my challenge for y'all. Try to fit in the word yen for travel in one of your conversations in this next upcoming week. And then she mentions her trip to Fez that she wants to go to. And Fez, I'm pretty sure, is an Italian place. It's in Italy. It's in Morocco. I was very wrong. Morocco is its own country. I don't know how geography works. But yeah, she talks about how she wants to go to Fez. And this is like a running strain in a couple of episodes, her wanting to go to Fez. On her birthday, he gives her money for Fez. They bring it up after that, talking about her going to Fez during the summer. It's these moments are part of what makes me love this stuff because they don't really forget about a lot of things. If something is in an episode, it is either relevant to that episode or at least brought up in a nod in a later episode. Which brings me to her talking about her backpacking trip with Lorelai, which becomes a central part of late season 3, early season 4. Is she is Rory graduating and then her and Lorelai going to Europe for a couple of months. This is the first time that it's mentioned, which isn't really surprising. It's the third episode. It's not like it was going to be mentioned in the first two. But and he is like, "Oh, that's a great idea." But later, when Lorelai and Rory come and tell them, "Hey, we are gonna go backpack through Europe," he then thinks it isn't a good idea because backpacking is beneath them. I guess Gilmores don't backpack. I don't understand these people. I hope to never have enough money to where I understand these people. It's gross. Yeah. And then one of Emily's friends walks up to them and starts talking, and Richard shows great disdain. Which, again, kind of weird because they grew up in the same circles, him and Emily. They knew all the same people. But Richard shows more disdain, maybe as much disdain for the life that he is living as Lorelai does for the life that they're living. I'm going to say as much disdain. I think there are very few occasions when he shows disdain for the, I guess, aristocracy. I want to say aristocracy. It's not like that deep. But like the class, the high class people, he shows a slight amount of disdain for them. Which really bonds him and Rory. Because they don't like high class people. But I think Rory kind of learns to like it over the course of the next 2 or 3 seasons. In a way that I think is a little bit of conflict for her and Lorelai, a little bit, because Lorelai has been trying to escape that life for a majority of her life for like 16 years. But then we see Richard start to warm up to Rory. And a lot of people say this is when he becomes good, this is when they have a good relationship. But I've always seen it as the reason that he warms up to Rory is because he can brag about her, because she's intelligent, because she has a 4.0 GPA, because because she could be the Lorelai that he wanted Lorelai to be before she went off and got pregnant, which not a valid reason to love your granddaughter this much. Like, yes, he should love her that much, but it shouldn't be conditional on her being this amazing student. And I think very much, at least at this point, his love is conditional. Though I think like later, like when she drops out of Yale, when she goes to work for the DAR, he still loves her. So I wouldn't say it's completely conditional throughout the entire series, but at least at this very point, Richard's love is conditional to what Rory brings to him. So then they go to steam rooms in the club because I guess golf clubs have steam rooms. I don't see why you would need one in a golf club. Golf isn't exactly the most like physically exertive sport. But one of the actresses who are in there plays Karen Wheeler in Stranger Things. I appreciate that. I love Stranger Things. Once I finish up with the Gilmore Girls recap on this channel, I'll do Stranger Things. Trust. Okay. So we go back to the wedding preparations at the end, and Kirk is back. But this is the first episode when he's actually Kirk. In all the other episodes, he was a separate, unnamed character. Well, named character, but wasn't a main character and wasn't Kirk. He was Mick or something. But Kirk is finally Kirk when he's bringing in the swans. And Michelle mentions that he's terrified of swans because he was attacked as a boy, which kind of a throwaway comment at this point in the series. But later on, Jess, who is Rory's second boyfriend, Luke's nephew, gets attacked by swans. So I think it's just like a funny like parallel there. And then the harp player, who only appears in like a couple episodes in season 1 and then never again in the series. They like kind of worked it out so she was supposed to be like a mainish character, but she doesn't appear in season 2. But interestingly, again, this actress was supposed to be Suki before Melissa McCarthy got the role. So I think maybe they were just working her in during the first season to kind of appease her for not getting the role that she was supposed to. But she shows up, and Michelle calls her and the swans, quote unquote, beasts of terror. Which, honestly, I don't get it for the swans, but I get it for her. Drella is a very interesting character that I really think we would have benefited if she was in later episodes. Okay. So Richard and Rory go to lunch. They're gossiping about Emily's friends and such and the people at the club. Yeah. But then he invites his business associates to sit at the table with them, which I think is kind of rude. Like if you're out at lunch with your granddaughter, you shouldn't be talking to your business associates. You should be talking to your granddaughter. I know. Wild ideas. But he does, when talking to them, remember Fez, which I know it's only been like maybe a couple hours, but it's sweet that he remembered. And I've been dogging on Richard a lot this episode, so I'm going to give him this subtle win. I'm going to give it to him. So the girls go to Luke's, Lorelai and Rory, and Luke goes off about how he hates golf courses and their environmental blights, and they use chemicals to keep the grass green, which I don't think people acknowledge how much of like a like green enthusiast person Luke is. Like he's very conscious about what he eats. He's very conscious about the environment, and I think it really gets swept under the rug with the rest of the more interesting aspects of his character. But I think it's something that should be noted. So Lorelai is talking to Rory about it, and she's really surprised that Rory had such a good time with her grandparents. And Lorelai shows sadness, and I think the reason she's sad about it is because she never had that with her own parents. She has never had the same connection with her father over the course of her 32 years of existence that her daughter got with her father in one day. So we go back to the inn, and Patty, Miss Patty, the local dance teacher, one of Lorelai's greater friends, one of the better characters in the show. I read that weird. She's one of the best characters in the show. I love her. Miss Patty. Miss Patty doesn't really have her own storyline per se throughout the series. There isn't a lot of character development, but I think she really is part of the setting for Stars Hollow. Having her, and I think her, Babette, and Taylor are sort of the foundation of the Stars Hollow townfolk. They bring like a stability and a status quo for them. And there's other characters who also like play into that in different ways, like Luke and Kirk and Lane, but they all have their own storylines. They all progress in their own way. While I think that Babette and Miss Patty and Taylor stay stagnant. Yeah. But then there's another aspect of Miss Patty's character that I want to talk about. And she has this weird penchant for like hitting on younger men during the show. She does it with Dean, she does it with construction workers, she does it with the twin grooms in this scene. And I'm not saying that Miss Patty is like a bad person or like an evil character, but I'm saying that if Miss Patty was a man who hit on younger women, then more people would have an issue with it, just societally speaking. I think that is something that should be looked at, should be examined, should be considered. Okay. Then Richard calls the inn, interestingly, not to check on Lorelai, but to check on Rory. Lorelai's the one who picks up the phone, so she knows. And she's upset because he has never called her. He's never called the inn to check up on Lorelai, but he does it to check up on Rory. So then this all leads to a conversation that Rory and Lorelai have at their house. And it also starts with this Rory going, I think I should change my hair. She has that same haircut for the rest of the series until the Demon Bob. And for those of you who don't know what the Demon Bob is, basically, Rory's character really starts to decline in season 4 when she gets a bob. The bob isn't directly the reason for her character's downfall, but it is part of it. It's kind of a signifier. This is when you know things are going down. So she talks about how Richard got her a copy of Macon's Gestopathy. Great book. Love it. A bit over my head the first time I read it, but great book. And I think it's interesting that he buys her a book specifically, because I think the characters who do buy Rory books, it's a signifier of the specific relationship they have. I've checked, and 4 characters buy Rory books over the course of the series: Richard, Lorelai, Jess, and Christopher. Christopher is an interesting, weird exception because the book that he buys for Rory is a book that he asked her, and she told him what book to get, so that doesn't count. But the other ones, I think it shows the connection they have, because I don't think anyone else knows her well enough to know what books to get her, except for maybe Lane. But that is a topic for another episode, because Lane isn't in this one. I'm upset about it. Okay, then Babette comes over, who, again, she's their neighbor. As I stated, she's one of the, I would say, one of the foundational members of the Stars Hollow town crew. And she talks about her cat, Cinnamon, um, who, R.I.P., in a later episode dies. It's a very sad moment. I think we should have a moment of silence for Cinnamon. Moment over. There's also another character who's in this scene. Maury, Babette's husband, who I think is a real mystery of a character, because we don't really see him that often, and we only ever see him in association with Babette. We don't really know a lot about his character, besides the fact that he is tall, he plays jazz, that's it. Which I'm now realizing I have this one friend who is quite literally Maury, because their main personality traits are being tall and liking jazz. I'm going to make fun of him for that later. Anyways, so then Lorelai's talking about how she thinks she can get them at a Friday night dinner, and Rory wants to go to Friday night dinner, and that is what freaks Lorelai out, which leads to her freaking out about a sweater that Rory is borrowing, talking about how it's her favorite sweater, and Rory should have asked before borrowing it, and how she's going to stretch it out because she's has a bigger cup size than Lorelai, and then they go on a rant about that. But again, this rant is not about that at all. It's I would say, a trauma response from Lorelai, a fear response, because she doesn't want to admit that she's upset about how close Rory is with her grandparents. Okay, and then they get in this big argument. Rory runs off, and then we go see Lorelai talk to it with Suki, where she admits that the argument was about golfing. She admits that the problem isn't like Rory, it's kind of the relationship with Richard. And Suki thinks that she is jealous of Rory, which I completely agree with, as I've stated in this episode. And then Suki makes a reappearance as she nearly kills a bike messenger because she sees some strawberries and she chases them down the street. Um, and then Lorelai is still talking about her issues, but then Suki is just spacing out on the strawberries, which I respect. Spacing out with food, very much a thing I've done before. And then Jackson shows up, and him and Suki have this cute moment of him getting upset at her for going to a different produce man to get strawberries, and then her chasing him across the street to make sure he's not mad at her. It's great. It sets up their relationship very well. Again, I'm a Suki Jackson lover. Best ship in the entire show. Dave and Lane are the best ship in the entire show, but Suki and Jackson are a very close second. Okay, so now it's the day of the actual wedding, and there are two things I need to call out: Rory's hair and Lorelai's outfit. Rory has this like weird, like half up, half down, like sort of semi braided thing going on. I greatly appreciate it. And then Lorelai is wearing this. It's like a purple shirt and scarf thing. Love it. And then Lorelai does something that Emily and Richard never do over the course of 6 seasons. And that is genuinely apologize for her actions. Round of applause. Not really a round of applause moment. I think parents should just genuinely apologize when they're wrong to their kids. But I also think a lot of parents don't apologize to their kids when they're wrong. I think it's an issue in our society that should be examined. Back to Gilmore Girls. So then they see this girl and her mother in the crowd, and her mother is yelling at her about not getting her dress ruined and how she spent $500 on it. And Lorelai sort of points this girl out and sort of allegorizes this girl as her. And then Rory does something that I think is really indicative of their relationship, which is thanks her for not forcing her to wear a dress like that. Which is really her saying, thank you for not forcing me into the lifestyle that your parents wanted to force you to into. And I think also, thank you for not forcing me into any lifestyle. Then Lorelai says, wearing those dresses isn't all bad, which is her way of saying, if you want this lifestyle, if you want this connection with your grandparents, Lorelai will support Rory in it. Okay. Then, final scene of the episode, which is another Friday night dinner. Emily says some things in this scene that really make me dislike her more. She is snide about getting leftovers from the inn, and she says she hates MTV. If you know me, I love Leftovers and MTV. If I could pick two things to go with me in my grave, it would be Leftovers and MTV. The disrespect is immeasurable, vile, horrid, ratchet. Emily should check herself. And then Richard and Rory start talking about books, and she's like me for real. Rory is me. I am Rory Gilmore. The way she talks about books and gets excited about books is the same way I talk about books and get excited about books. And then Richard, Emily, and Rory go off to go look at the book, and it just leaves Lorelai sitting there in the living room, and it kind of fades to black. And I don't know. I really like how this episode ends. I think it's very cinematic because nothing is really resolved except for Lorelai and Rory, which I think is how things should end. Because again, it takes many seasons for anything between the Gilmores and Lorelai to get resolved. Okay, that was the end of this episode. So here are my random thoughts at the end of the video. Um, Again, really solid episode. I'd say a solid 8 out of 10. It's not incredible, but it's not awful. It's just it's just good. It's just great. Um, I think the title, "You Just Kill Me Now," it doesn't really make sense within the episode, but it's a great title. And I don't know. It was just a great episode. And it sets up a lot of things that we see later, like the Fez trip, the Europe trip, Lorelai the First. And it also sets up a lot of the weird relationship dynamic between Emily, Lorelai, and Rory, and the way that the grandparents see Rory as a sort of retribution for Lorelai, a second Lorelai, a way to, I guess, reverse the mistakes they made with Lorelai, which causes a lot of conflict between her and Emily in later episodes, which we will explore in later episodes. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, all the things. Leave a comment. And I will see you guys next week. Actually, this time. Actually, we'll see you next week. Bye.